I sat down a while ago to write my own obituary, before all the craziness hit, before social distancing and all the baggage of our new reality. I got as far as graduated from this school, this or that, to make some money, and then I stopped. Was I tempting fate? If so, very bad timing. The obituary remains unwritten. But I began to think a thought about that last moment, about summing up a life in words. Writers, of course, use words, value words, rehearse and rearrange words like furniture. I always return to the transcendentalists, the American Eden that was conquered 2 centuries ago. Waldo Emerson, he disliked the name Ralph, was the glue, supporting dreamers and poets till the moment he transcended. His wife bought wood stoves to heat their drafty home, and Emerson made it his business to keep the place warm. His recorded last words, "I shall tend the fires." Sadly, Emerson suffered from dementia in his old age, begging visitors to tell me, please, the name of my best friend. He meant Henry David Thoreau, who died young. On his deathbed, the apostle of civil disobedience, was visited by a clergyman who thought the skeptic Thoreau might catch a glimpse of the other side, the great unknown. "One world at a time," said the caretaker of Walden Pond. I'm fond of Chekhov. He was a doctor in his day job and careful of what he ate and drank. He had self-diagnosed a peptic ulcer. In his final moment, he lifted a last glass with some close friends. It is so pleasant to sip champagne again. A good role model. Make mine Prosecco. Some otherwise ordinary people are famous because of their last words. Eric Garner was a black man from New York who sold single cigarettes on the streets of New York City. As a rogue cop put him in a chokehold, he said, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe." His words continued to echo. Of course, the final moments of family members affect us in profound and deeply personal ways. I was 26 when my father died. He had suffered a series of ever-worsening strokes and spent his last year in a nursing home in Peabody, a mill town north of Boston where I grew up. I was living in Boston, acting in Richard III as Lord something or other. Every night I got strangled on stage to death by the deformed king. It was October, rainy. The Red Sox were in the World Series. 2 games got washed out and had to be rescheduled. Carlton Fisk hit a towering home run to win Game 6. I had seen my father 2 weeks before, visiting with my mother. The nurses said he was in and out of consciousness, talking about squirrels doing somersaults. We had a big old tree in our backyard and a clothesline. And yes, a squirrel got on that clothesline and did acrobatic tricks. I hope, that my father flew back to his home in his last minutes. He was 72 when he died. No one said passed back then. The Red Sox lost that World Series, and I never acted again. My mother died 8 years later. Much had changed in my life. In 1983, I was married, living in Brooklyn, and having some success as a playwright. My mother and my new bride loved each other. Life was good. My mother was 8 years younger than my father. Growing up, she was the fun parent. My sister, much older than me, had gone off to her own life. I remember playing barber when I was little, combing my mother's raven black hair with her beautiful brushes. And I remember my first secret. Don't tell Daddy about our little game. My mother was still living in Peabody. I don't remember if the squirrels were still doing performance out on that clothesline. My sister's oldest son, my nephew, lived there now, while he worked his way through law school. My mother had health issues, late onset diabetes being the most serious. But like Chekhov, she was careful about what she ate, and she always took her insulin shots. It was the middle of January, cold and raw. We had planned to drive up from Brooklyn in a few weeks or so. My nephew called. Grandma's in the hospital. They are doing tests. She says not to worry. Her doctor doesn't think it's anything serious. She says just come when you are planning to come. In the course of my life, among the 100,000 things for which I have to thank my wife, this one stands out. We'll go right now, she said, today. We drove straight to the hospital. My mother smiled when she saw us. She was a bit wan, her glorious hair now crystal white, but still so fine. She seemed tired, but still herself, not lost in a cloud of medication. She had written out a list of things she wanted. Q-tips and a small bottle of Prel shampoo, her favorite. My wife and I went to lunch and then to CVS. When we got back to the hospital, my mother was gone. A massive heart attack in the middle of intensive care unit. Nothing they could do. When my father died, I skipped my curtain calls. I drove home, my face wet with tears. I was much closer to my mother, but I didn't cry for her. Instead, I felt more of an overwhelming sense of confusion. She couldn't be dead. She gave me a shopping list. Those Q-tips are long gone, but I still have that little box of Prel. So what remains? What final words? I am not a church-going man, but I do find myself praying from time to time. Praying that I do not wind up like poor Mr. Emerson, unable to recall the name of my best friend. I pray, like many of us pray, that as I age, I do not get sucked down the black hole that is dementia. No, I will remember the name of my best friend. My mind will be clear. My eyes will be open. I will reach out my hand. Adieu, mon amour. Adieu. Is there any more Prosecco? Thank you. Stay safe. Stay strong. Stay sane.